Africa is the oldest inhabited continent in the world, the birthplace of the human race, which is why it's sometimes referred to as the mother continent. Africa is also unmatched as far as mineral resources, home to the world's largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium. It's also abundant in gold, renewable fresh water sources, and petroleum. So it should come as a surprise that a land so rich in natural capital, home to nearly 20% of the global population, is also home to some of the poorest and most indebted countries in the world. More than a quarter of the world's hungry live in Africa, and dozens of its nations still don't have monetary independence from Western central banks.
80% of inter-African financial payments are processed by an American or European company, which is insane. I mean, that's just like, colonialism, basically.
Which is why Africa is now fertile ground for a unifying, revolutionary monetary technology taking root and growing at lightning speed. Bitcoin and Lightning adoption is happening here faster than anywhere in the world, and it's currently trading at a massive premium in places like Nigeria when compared with the official exchange rate of the local currency, the Nigerian naira to the US dollar.
What Nigeria wants is freedom. They want money they can be in control of as an individual.
From Nigeria to the Congo to the Central African Republic, which became the second nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, to Togo, African Bitcoiners have been fighting for freedom money as a way to drive away corruption and dictatorship from their countries. Among the most well-known of those activists is Farida Naburema, who lives in exile from Togo due to her political activism for a more democratic form of money.
Initially, for me, it was just a tool. Then eventually down the line, I started reading more about it, trying to understand the whole philosophy of Bitcoin. And then when I understood the philosophy of Bitcoin, something clicked in my mind. The struggle we have been fighting for in Togo for freedom is completely tied to our decision to have an independent currency.
Farida grew up watching her father and grandfather fight for economic independence, and her family has even faced imprisonment for speaking out against the regime. The currency in Togo, the CFA franc, is controlled and printed by the French treasury, and her family has seen their life savings devalued time and time again. Farida questions why France keeps Togo's reserves in its banks, money that's earned by the Togolese people, and then is used to buy French debt to finance the living standards of French people.
Why can't we just use Bitcoin, which is more like a nation-less currency, a currency that is not tied to a country, a race, an identity, the currency that belongs to everyone. And the most powerful part about it is the fact that it's immutable. The rules cannot be changed. Someone cannot wake up every day and announce that they are slashing its value by 50% and get us all poorer.
In West Africa right now, we have about 15 countries for whom basically France controls the currency itself. The CFA got devaluated by 50%. So what it means is that overnight, the money that my dad saved for me to go to college was divided by half. The Senegalese people didn't have nothing to say about it. They couldn't vote.
And as the US exports the worst effects of the global reserve currency inflation on the developing world, the need for sound money is extremely obvious to most Africans, even as Western economists seem blinded by their financial privilege.
The Bitcoiners in a place like the United States are overwhelmingly out of desire, whereas a lot of the people adopting Bitcoin in a place like Nigeria or Ghana aren't doing it out of comfort and hope. They're doing it out of, this doesn't work, I need this now. They're doing it out of need.
While the devaluation of the dollar, of the euro, of all these other things are happening, it has a trickle-down effect to our third-order currencies of the Kenya shilling and others across Africa, where we get burned even worse.
Eric Hersman, who was raised in Sudan and Kenya, is the co-founder and CEO of Gridless, a startup that works with energy producers to promote growth and sustainability through Bitcoin mining.
Really what you have in Africa is a lot of people who don't have electricity and grids that aren't well built. And so what they need is somebody who can come in and use that energy and help provide some sustainability to their own economic model. And then what we do at the same time is we provide some confidence that they can push out further to other locations and that they'll have a buyer of last resort.
Unlike the US, for example, where there are just a few interconnected and robust power grids, Africa is covered by small, local mini-grids, often running on hydro, solar, or geothermal sources of energy. But the problem with renewables is what to do with the excess power that's produced during periods of off-peak demand.
The use during the daytime is very low in these communities, and the use in the mornings and the evenings is higher. That meant they have a ton of stranded energy. Like the energy is sitting there, is literally being wasted, and it's being turned into heat and dissipated. And so we said, we have a better way of turning into heat and dissipating it. Let's put a Bitcoin miner on it. Then we can pay you for it.
Gridless and others are able to use Bitcoin mining as a profitable way to incentivize growth of local grids, providing a buyer of last resort for previously stranded energy, and thereby de-risking the development of many projects that can now serve more and more rural communities for the first time ever.
You're making the grid more efficient, but you're also providing sustainability. I call it a win-win-win situation. So you have a win for us, we're mining Bitcoin. You have a win for the energy generation, the mini grid, because they're able to sell all their power now. And you have a win for the community because they have a more power, more efficient power, and cheaper power.
And then you have jobs that are created in that sector alone, but new business opportunities and economic growth that are coming out of this because now people have access to energy and electricity, and they can use it for many other things, such as farming, such as producing goods and providing services.
But there are still many obstacles to Bitcoin adoption in Africa. Most people have mobile phones, but many have no internet access. And this image of Africa at night is telling. It illustrates something more foundational. Many communities lack access to electricity.
The numbers are, I think it's 37% who can get access to electricity, but even those who can get access aren't always able to afford it. And so you have this kind of doubling down problem. So access and affordability are closely linked for both internet and power.
Two of the most recent innovations to overcome the connectivity issues facing Africans are Machankura and BitNob.
My name is Bernard Para, CEO of BitNob, a Pan-African company building financial services on Bitcoin. What if we approached financial inclusion from a human rights perspective? What if we put the privacy, autonomy, and dignity of the individual at the center of how we tackle financial inclusion?
BitNob is using the Lightning Network to enable super fast and cheap remittances from outside Africa directly to users on the ground.
This is me doing good things with Bitcoin, right? So I decided to say Bitcoin, it's noble, right? So it's a combination of Bitcoin and noble, right? So that's what we call people who use BitNob nobles, yeah.
Wow, that's very, very, very smart and cool.
Machankura provides a service to send Bitcoin over the Lightning Network through traditional SMS text messages, bypassing the need for a smartphone.
The simple reason why this is so disruptive is the fact that if you need Bitcoin, you don't need the internet. Bitcoin and the internet have been so interlinked that now what Machankura is doing is removing the two and bringing in accessibility.
Solutions are being developed every day. And what I tell young entrepreneurs, specifically the tech developers in Africa, is that there's so many barriers to adopting Bitcoin in our countries. But despite those barriers, you still have the fastest adoption rates in the world, which means people are finding ways to counter those barriers.
As Farida points out, these new business and growth opportunities have potentially transformational effects on quality of life and economic development in a part of the world that has historically been subjected to centuries of corruption and exploitation.
What I find beautiful about Bitcoin is that it's technology that is extremely limitless. It's just like electricity. When electricity was invented, nobody would think that it would power computers today, and when I will be speaking thousands of miles away.
Right.
And same with the internet.
Yes.
So same with Bitcoin, it's a technology, and we don't know what it can achieve for us in 20 or 30 years down the line. It's still a very huge terrain.
If you're going to spend your life doing something, build something that makes the world a better place, makes it more meaningful. I think that's where I sit. Help proliferate a better human condition. I grew up here and I've seen the damage that NGOs and government can do. And I think if you actually want to make change happen in Africa, then you build businesses, you grow wealth.
Africans want to build businesses. They want to be in charge of their own economic destiny. They want freedom, and Bitcoin is helping them to achieve this.
But what does the world look like when everybody's using Bitcoin, when there are billions of people using Bitcoin?